Okay, welcome to this depleted meeting of the Local Plan Working Group, Monday, the 6th of March. I have had apologies from Councillor Taylor and Councillor Melly is here. Apologies from Councillor Lomas and Councillor Looker is here. Apologies from Councillor Galvin with no substitute. Apologies from Councillor Pavlovic with no substitute as well at the moment. So he's contacted me on the phone, saying he's not going to be able to make it in time for the meeting to finish. Okay, that's item 1 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest they wish to declare? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I'll declare an interest in the Strensall with Towthorpe local plan on a neighbourhood plan on the grounds that I was one of the working party, but on the basis I have no more interest in the outcome of it and we're only making recommendations. I don't see there's any impediment to me taking a full part in the meeting.
If you had turned up and then left, that would have been quite disturbing to me. Councillor Barnes.
Similarly, really, I don't think it's prejudicial, but as a resident of Strensall, I think I ought to just make that clear.
I guess I ought to do the same.
I may know what you have to say. Anybody else in Strensall before? Okay, that takes us to item 2, which is to approve the minutes on pages 1 to 8. Is anybody happy for me to sign those? Councillor Looker?
No, I don't. I very rarely raise anything under the minutes, but on this occasion, I do think I need to do. Oh heavens, it's on page 5. After Councillor Pearson had left the meeting, so the lack of a specific supplementary planning document to support policy D3 cultural well-being was a concern. I think it was more than a concern. I think we actually, and I know I was at the meeting and Councillor Smalley was at the meeting. I think we both moved that some recommendation should be made to the executive, that it was more than just a concern. There was some very real feeling that we ought to have recognised the importance of the cultural and well-being issue, and I'm just concerned that just labelling it a concern just seems to leave it hanging in the air, and I don't think it was hanging in the air.
Well, the minute was specifically because everything goes to the executive following this group, so it was to raise the issue to the executive on behalf of the working plan group.
It was raised, right?
Yes, it was raised at the executive meeting,
and the executive ignored it.
The executive took it on board and are progressing it.
You're sure?
As they see fit.
I do. Can I feel reassured, Councillor Smalley?
Yes, we had a discussion at executive similar to the local plan working group.
I know we had a good discussion because I was at that.
Yes.
But did the executive do more than just nod?
Yes, no, there's a full discussion. It's probably fuller than at the local plan working group, just without the public speakers. But it was discussed at executive.
May I, Chair? There's a recommendation, isn't there, on page 6 on the point 5 there for executive to consider including a specific SPD to support policy D3 culture and wellbeing. I suppose the question is, what was the response to that recommendation?
It was considered by executive, but they chose at that time not to take forward a separate supplementary planning document. But if effectively in the report, there's the opportunity to bring them forward at any point in time thereafter. So clearly that's something that executive can consider on an ongoing basis, because there was concerns, and I'm working from memory here, there's concerns at the executive that those items that were becoming cross-cutting themes rather than specific work seem to be addressed, and clearly it's going to be a matter for executive to make sure that officers do address them in those supplementary planning documents to their satisfaction, and clearly if they're not, then members can raise those concerns as they're brought forward.
Okay, so considered but rejected. To be clear.
The separate SPD.
At that moment in time. So with those comments, are we happy for me to sign them as a broadly correct record? So it's to item 3, public participation. We have no members of the public registered to speak. And so I will go straight to item 4, the substantive item, which is the Strensall with Towthorpe Neighbourhood Plan, Examiner's Report and Decision Statement. I'll hand over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. This is another neighbourhood plan that our community has brought forward for consideration by the planning inspector, and that has been done. There has been a public inquiry and the inspector has drafted their reports, and they are laid out in the report in front of you for consideration. If you've got any detailed questions, officers are here to address those questions. John, do you want to just give us a quick run through what those recommendations are?
Right, so I'll just go through the process that we've been through so far. And basically, the work on the neighbourhood plan started in July 2015, when the parish council agreed to pursue a neighbourhood plan for the parish. The formal stage of publication, production took place in consultation in line with the neighbourhood planning regulations 2012. The submission to the council took place in June 2021, followed by a submission consultation, which took place between 15th November 2021 and 7th of January 2022. The 14 representations received in total, and Rosemary Kidd was appointed as an examiner following agreement with the council and the parish council. The examination commenced in April 2022, and the examiner considered a number of key issues to consider, the main one being the future of the Queen of the Barracks at Strensall. The barracks was allocated in the local plan application draft version as ST35 with a yield of 500 dwellings. However, due to concerns highlighted in Habitat Regulations 2020, the site was taken out of the local plan as an allocation. The issues were surrounding the impact on Strensall Common SSI. It was felt that it was important for the neighbourhood plan to have a policy which guided development should development take place on that site, either if the allocation were introduced through the local plan examination or a separate application came forward for development on the site. So it was felt important to have a policy that guided development, whichever route it took. Phases 2, 3 and 4 of the local plan examination took place in May to September 22, and the barracks were in discussion at phase 3, which took place in July last year, 2022. It was agreed by the council and the parish council and the examiner that there should be a short postponement of the examination in the neighbourhood plan until the future of the barracks was confirmed through the local plan process, through the examination of the local plan. There was no conclusive approach decided at the local plan examination in terms of the future of the barracks at phase 3 hearing sessions. Therefore, a generic policy was drafted on the barracks that would guide development, whichever way that the site came forward, if it came forward at all. The examiner's report was received by the council on 13th of October 2022 and is included Annex A in the report pack. The examiner concluded that she was pleased to recommend to the City York Council that Strensall with Towthorpe Neighbourhood Plan should, subject to modifications I have put forward, proceed to referendum. The council's decision statement is set out in Appendix B to the report, and that shows council officers' views on the recommendations. In terms of the referendum, a date of the 4th of May has been put forward for that to coincide with the local elections. This date was discussed and agreed with the electoral service manager and the director of governance. It would make a logistical sense to hold the referendum on the same day as the elections, which would have a significant cost saving in terms of the poll station, staffing costs, etc., which could be up to a 10k saving. Because of the pre-election period, this will be the first available date we could hold a referendum. It would be 49 days after executive hopefully agree to take the plan forward, which fits within the 56 days allowed by the regulations. Both Strensall and Towthorpe Parish Council and the council have agreed that this timetable should be taken forward. with the referendum taking place on the 4th of May 2023. Beyond that, obviously, if the recommendation through the referendum is to approve the document, that will be made by the council in due course as a possible opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'll open it up to any questions or comments. Councillor Doughty.
It's probably comments really, Chair. I'm totally supportive of the officer's recommendation and happy to move that when the time comes in terms of going forward to executive, hopefully to approve the referendum. I think it's sensible, the date choice in terms of minimising the cost to the taxpayer, having it the same day as the local election is completely common sense. I think John earlier referred to Queen Elizabeth Barracks being an important element of this, and it absolutely is. My concern is, and it does look like, unfortunately, the army will still be leaving probably next year, 2024, and it's important that we have a plan in place for Queen Elizabeth Barracks, because what I would hate to see is a site that's left to perhaps some of the elements that we've seen previously in Strensall when we had the former tannery and all the problems that occurred there with antisocial behaviour. There were fires, reports of drug use there, that kind of incident. So it's important that we try and encourage a future plan for the site, whatever that might be. It's unlikely to be extensive housing development, because what we do know from the local plan draft is that there's concern about substantial housing development there because of the impact it would have on the common. So it is important that the council develops a plan for the site, and that happens and is implemented pretty much with the army leaving, in my view, because otherwise we're going to have some problems there. Notwithstanding that, obviously I'm supportive, and I would like to commend everyone involved in developing the neighbourhood plan. There's been an awful lot of work, and I know Councillor Fisher is going to refer shortly to some special thanks to some people that put a lot of input in that are sadly no longer with us. And I think I'd like to echo his comments he's going to be making in that respect. Thank you.
I think that's a new one, that pre-echo. It's a good one. I've ticked that off the box of things I've not had a council meeting. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I echo your concerns about the development of the Strensall Queen Elizabeth Barracks should the army decide to close them. Although I've spoken to a number of officers and their relatives, and they've told me they've not received the 2-year statutory notification, which they have to have, that they are being posted elsewhere. So consequently, the barracks cannot close now before 2025, because they have to give 2 years notice to the officers. Clearly, what happens to that is critical, but we felt it was absolutely essential to put in contingency plans should it be approved for housing at some point. Now, obviously, the 400-metre exclusion zone around the common will preclude most of that site being used for housing, but we felt it sensible to have policies in place because, as I said, we didn't know what the inspector was going to decide. As far as the section on page 100, very sadly, since the dedication was made, 2 more members of the working party have passed away. John Chapman, who passed away on December 16th, did a colossal amount of work on it, and I would love that to be added, his dedication to him be added to that as well. And Philip Thorpe, who was a former chair of the parish council and also did an enormous amount of checking, even down to the point of picking up every single spelling mistake and typographical error that there was. He spent hours checking them, and he did an enormous amount of heavy lifting, and it would be nice if they could be included in the dedication at the start. If that could be changed, it doesn't affect the materiality of the plan in any way, so I don't think there would be any objection to that. I'd also just like to thank a lot of other people for the work they've done on this. my fellow members of the Neighbourhood Plan Working Party, I mean, we've had to play hokey cokey with the Strensall Barracks because it's been in and out of the plan various times, but we've finally got through. Particularly the chair, Keith Marquis, who took the job on and has just lifted such an incredibly heavy load to get it through. Without him, there would have been no neighbourhood plan. I'd also like to thank Catherine Dukes, Mike Dando, and all the rest of the team at Directions who have kept us on the right track, and very much the Fort planning team at City of York Council who have done a quite incredible job of pulling everything together and giving us the advice. And you know, when the time comes, if we want to remove the recommendations, I'll say I will happily second them.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Orwell?
Comment, Chair, and support what both councillors have said about the amount of work that goes into this. Having watched this at the parish council, it is an immense amount of work from usually a small group of dedicated parish councillors, or sometimes people from within the community as well. Having looked at all that work that's done, I do hope that government take note of that when developers might try to challenge what's in the neighbourhood plan, not just here, but across the city and in other areas as well.
Thank you for doing my chair summing up comments that I was going to make there, Councillor Orwell, but I'll just leave it to check. Is there any other questions or comments anybody wants to make? I think the only thing I would add on top of that is the issue that I think Councillor Luck has raised quite often as well, is that with the civil legislation going through, these neighbourhood plans will take on significantly more importance and weight as it comes through. So how we actually look at working with those areas that aren't parished and don't have the resources of parish councils to enable them to get neighbourhood plans in place as well will be very important over the next 6 to 8 months. I've spoken to Neil and we'll add a recommendation on to the executive to see what we can do about amending the dedication. Always fear the planning inspectorate that we'll end up having to go to another 12-week consultation because we changed the dedication or something. But assuming that's not the case, we'll happily seek to bring that one round. I think no other further comments other than I look forward to. This should probably be the highest turnout for a referendum on a neighbourhood plan that we will ever have had, and should set a pretty high bar, I would hope, with it being held on May the 4th. Okay, with that, are we happy to approve the recommendations on page 9? Okay, that's carried. I have no urgent business, so happy to declare the meeting closed.